welcome to the next play along. We're going to be staying with the same rhythmic structure, but we're going to start to get a little bit more elaborate now with the phraseology that we bring into the flow of time. Now, up to this point in time, we've just been bringing simple phrases into the time signature, into the tal, and then repeating them 3 times. And so that gives us the concept really of what we're aiming for. But when there are more elaborate compositions and endings, then a lot of those individual components get sewn into the flow of time individually in the same way, and then in a reduced ratio, and then finally with an elaborate ending. So when one of these endings has multiple parts, often the individual parts are sewn into the flow of time. So we're going to be going back to the phrase that we learned in some of the previous lessons in the actual main course, not the play-alongs, and we're going to start with our 5-beat unit. Ta, ti, ki, na, tom. 3, 1, 3, 3, tom. Ta, ti, ki, na, 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 tom. Ta. And then we had different versions of that. We started to add gaps in it to make it different lengths, to make it longer. So tati genatom with one gap becomes from 5 to 6. Tati genatom, tati genatom, tati genatom. And then 2 gaps to 7. Tati genatom, tati genatom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And the fingering is exactly the same. Tati genatom, 3, 1, 3, 3, tom. Tati genatom, 3, 1, 3, 3, tom. Tati genatom, 3, 1, 3, 3, tom. So it's very logical. The fingerings are pretty self-explanatory. And so now let's look at how it gets sewn into the time flow. So the time cycle is going to be basically the same. We're still in Arditala, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the clapping cycle. We talked about that in the last couple of play-alongs, so go back and look at that if you're not absolutely sure. So the basic time cycle that we've got, that we're keeping for now. Remember, this is the time cycle that a South Indian percussion soloist would always start their solo with. Ta dim na ta ta dim na kita ta dim na dim dim na ta dim na ta ta dim na dim na dim dim na ta. So now first of all we're going to put the 5-beat phrase into that time flow. I mean, normally you'd be playing that time around for a little bit, on stage, they're playing time, they're working out what they're going to play next. So if you want to play time before and then go into the composition and introducing the phrases that we're introducing, the 5, 6 and 7 note phrases, then do that. So here's the 5-beat phrase integrated at the end of that rhythmic passage. Ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta ti kita tom ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta ti kita tom. So one of the keys to being able to play some of these odd phrases is that you count off the gaps with a set of syllables. So for example, I'd be playing ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta kita ta ti kita tom. I think ta kita ta. In my mind, that 3 is being counted off. It's easy, obviously, with a phrase like tati kita tom, you probably don't need to do it. But when the phrases get more complicated, it's a very useful device to employ. So it's good to get into the habit of doing that. Ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta kita ta ti kita tom ta dim. You obviously don't play ta kita, you're just thinking that. So next phrase is the 6-beat phrase integrated in the same place. Ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta ti kita tom ta dim na ta ta dim na kita tika dim na ta So again, you can have a little rhythmic phrase that you think in your mind, and then the actual phrase that you're going to play. So in this instance, it would be taka tati kinatum, taka ta dim na tata dim na kita dim na taka tati kinatum ta dim. So next, the 7-beat phrase, ta dim na tata dim na kita dim na ta ti kinatum ta dim na tata dim na kita dim na ta ti kinatum ta. So that's the first introduction of the themes, and then we're going to move on to the koreipu, the reduction, so they get introduced a little bit more regularly. First of all, the 5-beat phrase, ta dim na ta ta ti kinatum ta dim na ta ta ti kinatum. Then the 6-beat phrase, ta dim na ta ta ti kinatum ta dim na ta ta ti kinatum. Then the 7-beat phrase, ta dim na ta ti kinatum ta dim na ta ti kinatum. And at this point, we're going to go on to the slightly more elaborate ending. So the endings in South Indian traditional music are normally very, very long. This is not so long, but it's longer than we've done before, so it will seem as though it's quite extended. So we've got our 3 themes that we've sewn, or our 3 versions of the same theme that we've sewn into the time flow. Tati kinatum, tati kinatum, tati kinatum. 5, 6, 7. So this composition involves playing 5 3 times, followed by a gap, 6 3 times, followed by a gap, and then 7 3 times, and you end on the downbeat. So to make the mathematics work, the gap is 5. So the overall composition would sound like this, with our clapping cycle: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7, 8, and tati kinatum, tati kinatum, tati kinatum ta. Tati kinatum, tati kinatum, tati kinatum ta. Tati kinatum, tati kinatum, tati kinatum ta. So that you've got a gap of 5. Tati kinatum, ta 2 3 4 5, and then tati kinatum, ta 2 3 4 5. So again, as I said earlier, we're counting takita and then tati kinatum to be able to, put the solo phrase into the time flow. Similarly, we have a set of syllables that is used specifically just to count gaps, and this principle is massively important, especially when things start to get a little bit more complicated than they are at the moment. So the syllables for this gap, the gap of 5, is ta, ga, ta, ga, ta, ga. 1 2 3 5, 1 2 3 4 5. So that gap actually becomes, to the listener, it just sounds like a gap, and the rhythm has come in at a different place, and how did they do that? Especially when the compositions get more complicated. But in this instance, the gap is kind of part of the composition. All of the things that are put together with Indian rhythmic work is phrases and gaps, but the gaps are as specifically counted as the phrases. It's not just a bit of empty time and then you try and come in where you should come in for the next phrase. It's very carefully constructed with the gaps. So the syllables with this, if you were to count the gap as well, tati kenatum, tati kenatum, tati kenatum ta, aga tati kenatum, tati kenatum, tati kenatum ta, aga tati kenatum, tati kenatum, tati kenatum 1. And you could repeat that through 3 times, the whole thing, just start again, or you could just repeat it once. Tati kenatum, tati kenatum, tati kenatum ta, tati kenatum, tati kenatum, tati kenatum ta, tati kenatum, tati kenatum, di, gina, tum, ta. And the fingering is all the same. All you need to do is remember a one fingering. Ta, di, gina, tum. 3, 1, 3, 3, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, ah. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, ah. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta, di, gina, tum. Ta. Sometimes you'll see, particularly on Mridangam, you have to do that when you say Mridangam. Mridangam, try that at home. Anyway, yeah, you'll often hear the player playing the gaps, the gap phrases, as little ghost notes. And it's really it kind of becomes a little bit of the musical structure, the structure of the rhythm. It kind of sounds like a cool little addition. Not everyone does that, but I've heard that quite a lot with different players. So that's the form of this play along. We've got introduced the 5, the 6 and the 7 on the longer version of the time cycle. Then we introduced the 5, the 6 and the 7, shorter version of the time cycle, and then the ending. Before I go on to put the play along notation up, I'll just also say there's an alternative ending that I put on at the end. So I'll just explain that now, and then I'll leave the notation and the playing up as the reference. So far we've got 5-5-5 gap, 6-6-6 gap, 7-7-7 downbeat. Now, we've spoken before about, rearranging different rhythmic components and different things that we find in South Indian music. So this is no different. This can be rearranged, in many different ways. So one of those ways is to, instead of having 5-5-5, 6-6-6, 7-7-7, you have 5-6-7 gap, 5-6-7 gap, 5-6-7. It gives a completely different take on the rhythmic structure. 7, 8 and ta ti gina tum ta di gina tum ta di gina tum ta ta ti gina tum ta di gina tum ta di gina tum ta ta ti gina tum ta di gina tum ta di gina tum ta. So with this, you wouldn't repeat that 3 times. With the other one, 5-5-5, 6-6-6, 7-7-7, you can go around and repeat that 3 times. But with this, it wouldn't quite work in that way for I don't know, poetic reasons, I suppose, what you'd say. But all of these things you learn as you get deeper into the music. You learn, what goes where and when it can work. Now remember that the fingerings are the same. Ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta. 3 1 3 3 tum 3 1 3 3 tum 3 1 3 3 tum ta ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta ti gina tum ta. Now, one of the important things as you start to get it a little bit faster, don't worry, the notation's coming soon. When you've got 2 doubles, try and focus on accenting, not in an audible way, just in giving it a little bit more emphasis, accenting the second one, and then it makes them sound clear. If I don't accent the second one, it's a little bit sloppy. So the fact that you're accenting the second one means that the energy's going into that point, and you also hear the first one. So that's another little thing to bear in mind. Now, as I've said many times before we get to the notation, enough said. As something like 30% people aren't subscribed. So yeah, please do that. Share it. Try and make the channel happen. If it happens, there'll be more stuff. If it doesn't, there won't. And 3, 4. Alternative ending. 3, 4, and tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. Tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. Tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. 3, 4, and ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta ta dim na kita kita dim na tati kita tum ta dim na ta tati kita tum ta dim ta ta tati kita tum ta dim na ta tati kita tum ta dim ta ta tati kita tum ta dim na tati kita tum ta dim na tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. Alternative ending. 3, 4, and tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. Tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta. Tati kita tum tati kita tum tati kita tum ta.